I'm talking to Robin Hanan, the Director of the European Anti-Poverty Network. Robin, how's it going?
Very good.
Robin, could you introduce yourself to our listeners or viewers first, please, and just tell us about the work of the European Anti-Poverty Network in Ireland first, please?
Okay, we're a membership organisation made up of local organisations and national organisations working against poverty. So our members are, for example, local unemployed groups, local travellers groups, local migrant groups, community development projects, disability groups and so on. And we were set up to put the issue of the eradication of poverty on the top of the agenda at Irish and European level. We're part of a Europe-wide organisation called the European Anti-Poverty Network. I work for the Irish European Anti-Poverty Network, and we've worked for 20 years to support members in learning how to influence Irish and European policy, and also to carry out campaigns and lobbying on behalf of our members.
Yeah, and we're here today to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. We just talk a bit about Ireland first, just the Irish economy, Ireland on its own first for a minute. Like, how bad has the austerity been for your members in the last 7 years?
The last 7 years has been devastating for our members. There's a lot of talk in the media about the squeezed middle, and it is true, a lot of people who were previously quite well off have lost money. But the people who have lost most in this recession have been people who already weren't benefiting from the Celtic Tiger. People who were long-term unemployed, lone parents, for example, ethnic minorities like travellers and like refugees and migrants. So it's been very hard, and they've been hit by a number of different things. Firstly, obviously, unemployment has been a very big factor. But on top of that, there have been changes to the eligibility for social welfare, which makes it more difficult for people to access the basic supports they need to get their life together and to get back out into society, get active in society. There have been cuts, some of which are quite small in money terms, but have absolutely devastating effects to basic services like supports in education, like housing programmes, like public transport, particularly rural transport services, which are very important for people who can't afford cars to stay active in society. So the last few years have been really devastating. What we're saying now is, looking into the future, as the economy begins to pick up, we need to change the way we order our priorities. We need to say, as everyone has been saying but hasn't been doing for a long time, that the most vulnerable need to be protected and put at the heart of the recovery. We need quality jobs, not just any job, but a quality job which allows people the dignity and the security and the income to rebuild a decent sort of life. We need quality services like education, like health, like transport, housing and so on, to make sure that everyone has a chance to live a decent life and participate in society. And we need income for people who are either between jobs and rebuilding their lives, or people who, for various different reasons, are excluded from work. So we need all of these things to be put right in the centre of the recovery. And what we see at the moment is that these issues are relatively marginal to public debate in Ireland. And our members are saying it's time to change, it's time to get to make sure that what emerges from this recession isn't just another unstable Celtic Tiger, but it's a stable, sustainable, socially inclusive Ireland.
And how many members people do you represent?
We have about between 250 and 350 organisations in membership. Some of those are large national organisations like the Irish Traveller Movement or the Simon Community or the Organisation of the Unemployed. Many of them are local grassroots-based movements, either community development projects, local unemployed centres and so on. So we have a shifting membership all the time, but these are organisations which in different ways allow people to get active in trying to change their own communities.
Okay, and just to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, do you think the goals are realistic? This whole process is realistic, or it's idealistic and it's right to be idealistic, or do you think it's just pie in the sky?
I think it's probably all three. It has to be realistic because these are goals that we have to meet. The challenge of the next 10 to 15 years are that as the world tries to come to terms with the energy crisis, as it tries to come to terms with pollution and so on, we need to change the way we organise our consumption. That means that particularly in the richer countries, we're going to have to consume less. For our members, The important question is who's going to pay for that adjustment. Over the last 7 years, the poorest people in society have paid for the financial crisis. We need to make sure that the poorest people don't pay for the environmental crisis, the development crisis, and there shouldn't be a competition between poor people in Ireland and poor people around the world. The issue is, how do we take control of wealth? How do we make sure that that wealth is used to support human need, not to support greed, and to create long-term sustainable societies?
And I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago. There was an event organised with Docus and the Whale in St Vincent de Paul House on Sean McDermott Street. Do you think that was a good meeting?
It was very good. I thought it was very useful for people involved in Irish community groups and international development NGOs and environmental groups to all get together and compare notes. The previous round of goals, the Millennium Development Goals, have been very, very important on a world stage, but not so important at home in Ireland or in the other rich countries. This time around, we've got to make sure that we get it right for everyone, and that particularly we don't find it's very important that we don't end up with poor people in Ireland in competition with poor people from the rest of the world. We've seen just today, as I'm speaking, we're hearing more and more news, for example, about people trying to get from parts of Africa into Europe, and the fact that Ireland has closed, that Europe has closed its borders, and Ireland, as part of Europe, has closed our borders to people from the rest of the world. It's damaging for people who are trying to escape and rebuild a new life. It's also damaging for our own economy. We don't get the energy and the skills of people who are coming here and who want to make a new life for ourselves. And it's very important that we don't set the interests of people who are our members against the interests of people in other parts of the world.
And do you think there should be an audit done, just talking about immigration? Like, it's good, I presume, to have people coming into the country who can work and have skills and this kind of stuff, but like presumably a good proportion of people who want to come in from North Africa, from Africa, like they're kind of, people would say they just want to be on welfare. Do you think it's good? Do you think we should let them in? Like,
well, David Cameron in Britain has started this discussion about what he calls welfare tourism, and not only the academic institutions in his own country, but the European Commission have said very clearly that he's talking rubbish. There is no evidence that people, and I've worked a lot in the past with migrants in Ireland, you don't come across people who say, I want to put my feet up in a deck chair for 20 years and live on welfare. That's not why people come here. People come here to build a decent life. In fact, the people who come here are the most energetic people. It takes a lot of drive and push over a year or two to actually get from many African countries to here. The other thing I think we need to be aware of is that people are not coming from all developing countries. You don't leave your home unless you really have to. People are coming from states which have collapsed, states which are in civil war, or states which are in environmental or economic collapse. It's not as if the whole developing world wants to come here. We need to be much more open to the world. A country like Lebanon, for example, has between 2 and 3 million refugees in the country at the moment. No one has ever counted them. The entire European Union has 80,000 refugees in it. There are very, very poor countries in Africa, like Tanzania, which have over 1 million, have had over 1 million refugees at particular points in the past from various wars around. And if they hadn't taken those people in, there would have been outcry in the international community. That's far more than the number of refugees in the entire European Union, which is a very big, modern, populous economy. So we need to get real about this. We can't simply say that we want to exploit the mineral resources and the trade and all of those potential of the rest of the world, but we don't want people coming here. A lot of it is actually to do with fear and suspicion. Most economic studies would say that migration is a very positive thing, and any country which has tried to close its borders to migrants has gone into stagnation, as we've seen in Japan, for example, which was a very prosperous country until it was driven by fear of foreigners into closing its border. We need to get realistic about what migration can contribute to our economies, particularly with ageing populations. In every country in the European Union, including Ireland, there have been studies which show that migrants, when they're allowed to work, contribute a lot more to the exchequer than they take out of it, because migrants come here young, they don't have the same number of dependents, far less of them are on pensions and so on. So I think we need to get over some of this fear, and it's very, very worrying that right across Europe nationalism and racism are on the march, and we've seen in several countries in Europe, particularly in the last European elections, very strong racist parties, some of them with fascist backgrounds, some of them just modern racist parties, have done very well in elections, and we need to argue back. We need to argue why migration is an important part of building a new Ireland.
Okay, that's very interesting, Robin. Just to finish up, I'll definitely be talking to you again, probably before the end of the year or early next year when the new development goals come into force. In summary, what's the message you have for our viewers about your opinion, the European Anti-Poverty Network on the Sustainable Development Goals?
The issues Sustainable Development Goals deal with issues like inequality, issues like ensuring that the super rich are brought into the tax net, issues like health, issues like education, issues like gender equality. These are all issues which we need to deal with in Ireland as well as abroad. In the last round of goals, while in theory the issues were the same, in practice, because they were set at such a minimum level, they didn't mean very much within a country like Ireland. Now, as we face into a complete change in our economy over the next 15 years, we need to start bringing the two debates together. We need to we can learn a lot. A lot of community development organisations in membership of the European Anti-Poverty Network developed originally from people who had learnt from Latin America, from the Philippines, how to do community organisation. In the same way, many Irish people have worked abroad on many of these issues. Last year we saw, in 2007, we saw a lot of the issues to do with structural adjustment and the way in which debt can be manipulated to shift power within countries. A lot of those issues we talked about in Latin America, in developing countries for decades, coming home to roost in Ireland. So we need to be talking much more globally, we need to be learning from each other across the world, and we need to be talking, people working against poverty in Ireland need to be talking to people working against poverty around the world about how together we can use these goals to create a more equal and sustainable globe. Thank you.
That was